You ever wake up to the sound of your own property being violated before the coffee's even brewed? That's exactly how my Tuesday started, 6:17 a.m. The unmistakable crunch of bolt cutters biting through a $40 master lock like it was warm butter. I didn't grab a baseball bat. I grabbed my phone. Because I knew exactly who was out there. Vivian Hargrove, president of the Willow Creek Estates HOA. The woman who once fined a widow $250 for having excessive Halloween pumpkins. The same woman who'd spent the last 8 months turning my name into neighborhood toilet paper, whispering to anyone who'd listen that I was that single dad running some shady side hustle out of a backyard shed. Never mind the shed was a 120-square-foot home office I'd gotten city permits for after my wife died. Never mind the only side hustle was me trying to keep my graphic design business alive so I could raise my 12-year-old daughter without selling the house. Facts didn't matter to Vivian. Only control did. I stepped onto the back deck in my slippers and bathrobe. Phone already recording. There she was in all her glory, khaki capris. Pastel polo with the little embroidered HOA logo. And a face like she'd just caught me burying a body instead of the other way around. Morning, Vivian, I said. Voice calm as a Sunday sermon. You lose your key to the neighborhood or just decide my gate looked lonely. She didn't even flinch. Just straightened up. Wiped a smudge of grease off her hands with a monogrammed handkerchief. And hit me with that signature smile, the one that said I'm not mad. I'm disappointed in your entire bloodline. Ethan. Really? Must we do this the hard way? Article 7. Section 2.3 clearly states that any auxiliary structure visible from common areas must be pre-approved by the Architectural Review Committee. Your shed is an eyesore. I'm simply performing my due diligence. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Due diligence? You just committed a felony on camera. Lady. Smile, you're live. Her eyes flicked to my phone for the first time. That perfect little smile twitched. Just a hair. But I saw it. You're being dramatic, she sniffed. I have every right. You have the right to remain silent, I cut in. Dialing 911 with my thumb. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of public opinion and actual court. Your choice. The dispatcher picked up on the first ring. I gave her the address. Described the situation. And added the magic words, she caught my lock. She's still on my property. And she's recording this too. Apparently. I nodded at the little GoPro clipped to Vivian's belt like she was some kind of suburban Rambo. Vivian's face went from I've got this to oh shit in about 3 seconds flat. She took one step back toward the gate. Then remembered she'd just destroyed the only way out. You're making a mistake, she hissed. Voice low enough the neighbors wouldn't hear. I have friends on the city council. I can make your life hell. Lady, I said. Still recording. My life's already been hell since the day you decided I was public enemy number 1. Difference is, today the cameras are pointing at you. By the time the sheriff's deputy rolled up, lights flashing but siren off. Because even he knew this was going to be a circus, half the block was pretending to water their already perfect lawns. Mr. Delgado from across the street was straight up filming on his porch with a bag of chips. Mrs. Patel next door had her little Yorkie in one arm and her phone in the other. Narrating like it was TikTok. Deputy Ramirez took one look at the cut lock. The bolt cutter still in Vivian's hand. And the GoPro still rolling. And let out the longest sigh I'd ever heard from a human being. Ma'am, he said. You mind telling me why you're trespassing on private property at 6:30 in the morning? I'm the HOA president, she answered. Like that was a get-out-of-jail-free card. I have a duty to enforce the covenants. Ramirez didn't blink. Covenants don't trump the Constitution. Ma'am. Hands behind your back. The click of the cuffs was the single most satisfying sound I'd heard since my daughter's first laugh after her mom died. Vivian lost her mind right there in my backyard, screaming about property values. About how I was ruining the neighborhood aesthetic, about how she was just trying to protect us all. The deputy had to physically steer her toward the cruiser while she kept yelling over her shoulder. "This isn't over. Ethan. You'll be hearing from our attorney." I just waved. "Tell him I said hi. And bring donuts to the arraignment, I'll be there." 2 days later the official HOA letter showed up. Not in my mailbox like a normal human. Slid under my front door at 3 a.m. Like a ransom note. Thick cream paper. Gold embossing. The works. "Dear Mr. Caldwell. While we regret the unfortunate incident involving our president, Mrs. Hargrove was acting in her official capacity to address a long-standing violation. We expect your full cooperation moving forward and remind you that continued noncompliance will result in daily fines of $100. They didn't even pretend to apologize. Just doubled down. That's when I stopped being the quiet widower who kept his head down. I called my old college roommate, now a pit bull civil attorney in Denver. Sent him the video. Within 48 hours we had a demand letter on their doorstep and a temporary restraining order keeping Vivian at least 500 feet from my house. I also installed 4 new cameras, 2 on the shed, 2 on the gates, and made sure the signs were big enough to read from the street, "Smile, you're on camera." Trespassers will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and also mocked on the internet. The retaliation was predictable. They slapped a new violation on my door for unauthorized surveillance equipment. I laughed so hard I almost cried. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer with the subject line, "They're really not getting smarter." The real fun started at the emergency board meeting they called to address community concerns. The community center was packed. People who never showed up for anything were suddenly there, grandmas. Young families. Even the guy who usually just mowed his lawn at midnight. Word had gotten around. The video of Vivian in cuffs had 187,000 views on the neighborhood Facebook page. Someone had added the Benny Hill theme. It was beautiful. I walked in with my daughter Sophie holding my hand, partly for moral support. Mostly because I wanted them to see what they were really messing with. Vivian was sitting at the head table, looking like she'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Her usual power suit had been replaced by something that screamed I'm innocent. I swear. But her eyes, those eyes were pure venom. The president, some retired accountant named Harold who'd always been Vivian's yes man, tried to start the meeting like it was any other Tuesday. "Before we get to new business," I said, standing up without being called on, "I'd like to address the elephant in the room. Or should I say the felon in the room?" The crowd murmured. Vivian's face went the color of a ripe tomato. "My attorney has filed a civil suit against the HOA and Mrs. Hargrove personally for trespass, vandalism, and intentional infliction of emotional distress," I continued. "We also have reason to believe this wasn't an isolated incident. So I'm asking, right here, right now, who else has had their property invaded by this board?" Silence for half a second. Then Mrs. Delgado stood up. "They came into my backyard last month while I was at work. Took pictures of my tomato plants. Said they were too tall. Mr. Patel next, they left a note on my door saying my Christmas lights were culturally insensitive. I'm Hindu. I had deal lamps. One by one they stood. 18 people in under 10 minutes. Every story the same, unannounced visits. Photos taken without permission. Fines for things that weren't even in the bylaws." Vivian tried to interrupt. "These are all misunderstandings. We're simply trying to maintain standards." "Standards?" I laughed. You mean the standards that let your brother-in-law's landscaping company get every single contract for the last 4 years? The ones we're about to audit? That's when I dropped the folder. Public records requests. Bank statements. Emails. My lawyer had been busy. Turned out Vivian and 3 other board members had been funneling HOA dues into a shell company called Creekview Maintenance Solutions that was registered to, surprise, Vivian's cousin in Scottsdale. Over $142,000 in 2 years. For what? Premium enforcement services. Which apparently included buying Ring cameras and hiding them in common areas to spy on residents. The room went dead quiet. Then the yelling started. I didn't have to say another word. The mob did it for me. 3 weeks later, the state attorney general opened an investigation. Vivian resigned for health reasons the same day they seized the HOA's computers. But she wasn't done being stupid. At 2:14 a.m. one night, my cameras caught her nephew, some 20-something trust fund kid, spray painting the lenses black. He was wearing a hoodie and everything. Like we were in a bad spy movie. I sent the footage straight to the DA. They picked him up the next morning. He flipped faster than a pancake. Told them everything, how Vivian had been directing compliance teams to install listening devices in people's backyards. How they'd recorded conversations about selling houses. About divorces. About medical issues. Then used the info to pressure people into compliance or selling cheap so board members' friends could buy the properties. Federal wiretapping charges. RICO. The works. The trial was 6 months later. I sat in the front row every day. Watched Vivian go from entitled queen to hollow-eyed defendant in a discount pantsuit. When the prosecutor played the audio of her literally saying, "If that Caldwell won't sell, we'll make his life so miserable he'll beg us to take the house," the jury actually gasped. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was last month. Vivian got 7 years. The other board members got lesser sentences but permanent bans from ever serving on another HOA. The neighborhood voted to dissolve the old covenants entirely and start over with a new board, elected, transparent, and with actual term limits. My shed is still there. I painted it the exact same color as the house just to be petty. Sophie helped. We hung a little brass plaque over the door that says "Built with Love." Permitted by the city. And defended with spite. Last weekend I was out front watering the lawn when Mrs. Patel walked by with her Yorkie. She stopped. Looked at the new NOHOA enforcement without a warrant sign I'd put up. And just started laughing. "You know," she said, "I used to think you were the problem." I grinned. "Yeah." Turns out the real eyesore was the woman with the bolt cutters. She patted my arm. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Ethan. For real this time. So here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Was Vivian Hargrove just a dedicated volunteer trying to keep property values up, or was she running a suburban police state that finally got what it deserved? And more importantly, if your HOA pulled this crap on you, would you have stayed quiet like I did for 8 months, or would you have gone full scorched earth the second they touched your lock? Drop your answer below. I read every single one. And if you're dealing with your own HOA Karen right now, hit that like button. You're not alone.